just AI on its own, it's not going to do it. There's going to be a gap between how the world as you see it could be and how it is.
I think we're going to have to evolve to ways of finding different purpose that doesn't involve my 60-hour work week.
Welcome to the show. Welcome to the show. So today I think we're going to be talking about collaborative intelligence, which is HI, human intelligence, and AI mixed together. And it's the way to be truly, as the Bostonians like to say, wicked smart, because just AI on its own, it's not going to do it. Human intelligence, one person can only know so much, but it's collaborative intelligence, or is it collective intelligence? What do you like to call it?
I started with collective intelligence, I think. Are you asking me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wasn't sure. I started with collective intelligence, but more and more, I think it is collaborative. As we use these tools more and more, we're interacting with them, we're building alongside them. AI is a partner for us, and so collaborative is the word I'm landing on lately.
Yeah, and I think I love that it's really all of this continues to evolve as we've continued to evolve. I think the only difference, which isn't actually a difference, is just a continuation of the theme. It's just the acceleration of how quickly the change is and how vast the change is. And I don't think there's anybody that isn't like, oh my gosh, this is a lot, unless they are a liar in some ways.
That overwhelm is real, right? Back when all this started, we were putting out 600 new products a week. There were lists that were, and how can anyone wrap their head around that?
Yeah, and I would be sure that out of those 600 products each week, maybe 3 will be around in 2 years. Because yeah, it's just things are going faster and faster. I think we're evolving faster, but not quite at that rate. And I think to be okay that we don't have to know everything. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we can be okay with. And it's maybe one of the hardest things for those of us that are already think that we're wicked smart, is to come to terms with like, we're not. There's so much more, and we're not going to get it all in this lifetime. But we can get a lot more with the collaboration with other people and with our happy, friendly machine tools, right?
Collaboration has made it difficult, I think, though, on the business side. You saw 600 apps that were largely consumer grade. And to be fair, I think they were, and you'd agree, they were mostly wrappers on LLMs. That in hindsight, those products didn't stick around because most of us figured out how to do it manually, how to build our own.
Yeah.
But doing this at a business level, not just at a consumer servicing level, all that opportunity for creativity, I think, has been paralyzing in the business world because there's so much flexibility, and you're leaving businesses with, what could I do? What do I want to do? And businesses, frankly, have been responding digitally for years to regulations, things like Sarbanes-Oxley 20 years ago. They've been told what they're trying to achieve from a regulatory standpoint, and this is wide open. And I think that's been hard for people. When I take it back to the human element, it's to truly elevate collaborative intelligence, we have to take it beyond just building keto diet plans or weekend trip itineraries. That's where we all start. But
yeah, or generating just copy for, or generating emails and just word salad, and
and those things are valuable. Don't get me wrong.
Oh, yep.
I've used it 4 times this morning already to do just those simple tasks.
Yeah. And I used it for your bio, which I think now is the time to go, who am I talking to? Who's on the Engineering, Emotions, and Energy podcast? I'm here talking to Tanya Long. She's an expert in AI integration and governance. She's pioneered the role of Chief AI Sherpa. She has 2 decades of experience at the helm of 400 product launches and 20 major mergers and acquisitions. She's generated substantial value and transformed legacy systems into AI-driven enterprises. She's also the author of AI and the New Oz, which is a guide that demystifies AI for leaders. It offers strategic adoption tips to enhance business outcomes. So yeah, Tanya, thanks so much for being on the show. I've known Tanya, I think it's only been like a few months now, but it's been great ever since we met at a lovely networking event in Palo Alto here in the Bay Area, which those of you that probably aren't Bay Area focused, Palo Alto is the home of Stanford University and tons of other venture capital firms. It's probably like the little mini outside of SF proper, where a lot of the tech that either amazes or annoys you likely comes from. So yeah, so glad to have you here to sort of talk about some of these fun concepts of where AI, people, and where the world is going and where it could be.
I remember meeting you. I remember vividly that night. One of my founders was hosting that event before he went off to start college. Uh,
Oh yeah.
it was a clean tech event. Harshal is an entrepreneur that I work with, but I think it's important to reflect on that event as what brought you and I together, but what also I think is bringing AI to the forefront and is making it humanity game changing. That event, you and I might have been twice the age of some of the people in the room, but it's not an embarrassment anymore because there was also a couple of guys there that were probably 15, 20 years older than us.
Hmm.
And you remember, and the point is, in my 25 years in tech, I've never seen a time that has been more collaborative than this, where you've got people with 20 years of tech senior leadership experience at the table with a 22-year-old who came out of college wanting to be an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
And people are like, chewing on big audacious problems together. And that collaboration, I think, is birthed out of the capacity AI has as an enablement platform for us to build things we never could before, but no one person can build it all by themselves and it be complete for what the market needs. And that's why all this collaboration is happening. Hence a clean tech event, not my space really, but Harshal's my guy. And such a range of backgrounds, experiences, and frankly, business maturity levels that is bringing so much of us back together after those dark years of the pandemic.
Yeah. And it's because I feel like any good entrepreneur is going to have a vision for how they want the world to be. If
Mhm.
they don't, they should fucking stop. I'm just gonna say, like, if you don't have a vision for how you'd want the world to be, probably just stop, just don't. But there's going to be a gap between how the world as you see it could be and how it is. And especially if you're younger, I mean, it probably really doesn't matter who you are. Everybody's going to be, just because we only have a limited perspective, in our own body, our own experience, we're not going to know the world as it is as widely as if we go and talk to other people and use their expertise or their experience. And so that's why bringing on more people, more viewpoints is so crucial in anything, and especially with AI, because if you can't get AI enabled products and solutions to work with the people that are here, you're never going to get to that vision that you have in the future, right?
100%. I'm only a couple of years into the founder space after a long career in big enterprise. And it was an adjustment for me. But what I'm seeing is the value everyone brings. The 60-year-old VC brings a
Hmm.
different value set than the 22-year-old with those big ideas that need to be tempered and groomed, nurtured. That is the beauty of what, and we can build it now. We have the capacity, the tools, and the ability to manage data like we've never had before. This is well beyond make me a keto diet. This is we're talking about solving big problems like figuring out how to water crops in agriculture in a more automated way to water more effectively. That might seem boring to people listening on this call, but we have a climate crisis and we still need to grow food for 7 billion people.
Yeah.
So things like that, they really matter. And when people are willing to wrap their energy around that and solve that problem, I was just at an ocean cleanup project, um, port call in San Francisco, and I think he was 19 when he had the vision to clean up the ocean because he went diving in Greece and there was more plastic than fish. And a lot of what he's been successful at has been because of metrics and because of numbers and putting sensors and things. So this is all in the AI sphere, not generative AI, but this is
Yeah.
all in the this collection and dissemination of analytics and making it predictive. And now they're going down to the river level, the top 20 most polluted rivers that are feeding the oceans, plastic and trash. And it's just amazing. And he was 19 when he single-handedly decided to quit college and clean up the oceans, and people laughed at him. And now 8 9 years later, they're doing a $4 billion raise. So AI enabled him to take on this audacious goal to measure it and make it valid for people who weren't willing to listen, and to create essentially a reason to collaborate.
And it's like I think what I really love about that point and that example is it's the AI, this new tool of AI enabled what is the most important part that AI to me, I don't think will ever replace, which is a human with a fantastic vision. I think it's, coming up with that vision, that question, and then that discernment of how are we doing along the way, the discernment. Because I came from, the corporate space, worked at Intel for 11 years, then another large pre-IPO startup. And I think the thing that I've realized is the difference between startups and unfortunately any corporation that it gets to a significant size is the large corporations, they eventually have zero vision, zero vision. They'll have a vision statement, but it's usually something bullshit like, to enable compute for all of mankind. And it's like, um, but the vision is always the same, which is improve quarterly profits to maximize shareholder value. It's maximize. And I think we've seen this in the past year with the record amount of layoffs that tech companies have done as they've gotten improved productivity. They don't have any vision to do anything with more productivity, so they just fire people. Whereas I think you, me, and all these other startup founders likely would go like, if I had more productivity and more people, there's so much more I would do. I would just expand so much. But the corporate machine is not set up for that. It's not set up for that yet. And I like to think that that's going to be one of the things that shifts hopefully in the next 10, 15 years, where large corporations actually do have a vision that people actually get excited about instead of just like, well, they fucking pay well.
Or
Mm-hmm.
consider that organizational structures, once you get to a certain size, just aren't optimized to be as creative. And there are easier ways for people to exit and build new things when there aren't the constraints of things like stock prices and market reaction to things. I don't believe that the innovation of the next couple of years is going to create big companies. I believe innovation is going to stay small in size for headcount, and we're going to have unicorns. We're going to have $1 billion companies with very few people. I don't know that our current way of being in large corporate structures will ever retailor itself to that. And frankly, I got a lot of friends still in that space. Nobody's working on that. They're not working on accommodating. They may have some accelerators. But they're programs. They're not ways of changing the company culture. I believe we need to make it easier for people to step out and do something innovative, that where they're not constrained by the corporate mindset.
Yeah. Well, and I don't necessarily know if it's the number of people. There's something about when it's the scale of the amount of money involved
Mhm.
and things like that. Because I think there already are some very, very large companies that don't have high headcount. Like I don't have some, but I know there's some that are, or at least at one point there was like 1,000 employees and they're, multi-billion-dollar corporations.
Mhm.
But they still end up sort of succumbing to how 100,000 plus employee organizations kind of operate with sort of the bloat, the bureaucracy. things like that. And I kind of think that a lot of the stuff you put in your book, whether that was your intention or not, is a little bit of the blueprint for whether it's large just because of the amount of, people being impacted, the amount of money coming in, or if it is actually a large number of people. I think it sort of enables this, sub leadership at multiple levels, like a more in some ways, it's sort of like how Web3 and crypto is trying to be for some other things. I think this like people can be enabled to be like nimble and creative on smaller levels within a larger um, a larger space, and like these, the AI tools sort of like enable that a little bit of like, hey, I can, if there's a problem, let's solve it. We don't have to necessarily wait for a tops down. But again, it does sort of like require the top to be open to that or work with that or allow that or have that fit as part of the vision instead of this traditional tops down, hey, it's got to be this way.
The systems aren't set up to invest in that zero return first few months or even years of investing toward that and it eroding margins. However, the systems are very much set up for companies to be birthed and supported pre-revenue as they build, right? And that's that
Yeah.
entrepreneur community that we're
Yeah.
involved in. I, I think it would require too many major companies to have a big shift in heart and then
Yeah.
programmatically be able to accommodate an investment in doing certain things that are not going to drive margin improvements.
Oh yeah. I don't expect any of the current companies to change. I my vision would be is that these, the new crops of companies that are creating
Mhm.
their culture, creating their structure, have a lot of this built in and are able to, because I do think, like you said, there's the ability to work with more data sets and get more insights with these new tools. So there's people that have already, they've worked their ass off to, because no large company does anything out of their goodness of their heart. Anytime they do something that benefits people, it's because there's a profit motive. So anytime there's something that's like, oh, we'll give benefits for exercise or we'll give benefits for time off, it's because some people did a lot of work to demonstrate with data that that would boost productivity and profitability. So I believe that there's the possibility of seeing more things and going like, oh wait, the vibes of the people create value for everybody. That I think a lot of us kind of know that like happy, joyful, people that are able to express themselves result in way more productivity that goes beyond just how a lot of old school thinking thinks of productivity, which is, number of hours in equals more output, which for the majority of work nowadays is and has been total bullshit. We're not painters, we're more square footage
Mhm.
is, painted by more hours. It's sort of like how good is the idea? How insightful was that analysis and what decisions came out? And perhaps my hope is that we're able to have, data with the help of AI tools to sort of quantify that and justify that so that, some of these things that a lot of startups are able to do continue to be able to done, even in the face of challenges. Because it's like anytime a current company has challenges, the first thing is like, I saw this for Intel, which is having really, really hard times now. It's like they got rid of all of these benefits. They're laying people off and they're getting rid of the free coffee. They're getting rid of all these other things. And it's like, yeah, that's going to reduce money, but that's also going to reduce the happiness, which is going to reduce the productivity ultimately, which is just going to be part of a greater death spiral. But if all you care about is the numbers and you don't have other numbers yet, I'm hoping that we start to have other numbers that are going to show things are profitable when we're happy and joyful and yeah.
One of the things that I'm swinging this from enterprise back to our entrepreneurial attachment
Hmm.
that we have with that community. Uh, but I think AI is driving the enablement of people to do what they love more and not be so sucked into things they don't enjoy.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm seeing a lot more segmented businesses where, in order for a business to deliver, They're reaching out to one company to do their GPU AI cloud infrastructure. Boom. They're
Hmm.
reaching out to another company to do some specialized front end engineering stuff. And they develop a
Hmm.
partnership there. Boom. And it does create this social construct of this
Yeah.
network of resources. You may have a 15-person company, but you've got 4 or 5 other companies you work with that make you whole.
Yeah.
And those companies are all serving their particular skill set and expertise. And I think that's a beautiful thing because people are then entrenched more deeply in what they really are called to do and doing what they enjoy and making a
Yeah.
profit.
Yeah. It's almost making me feel like in some ways it's sort of ends up being these things that are in some ways very global, but it kind of brings like almost like a small town way of doing business where it's like, oh yeah, well, I have my dentist that I love to work with. I have my accountant I love to work with.
Right.
I have this, and it's like you would know the person and then they have their entity that does and isn't just based off of who's in your little small town. It can literally be like, oh, my front end design company, they're based in Argentina, and my GPU
Mhm.
people are out of Singapore. But I
And it
love
is.
that.
It's a small town called Gaia Earth, and it's increasingly smaller because digitally we're able to interact. But there's still that familiarity, that partnership is, means one thing in a company the size of Intel. But I think it means something entirely different in the entrepreneurial world. These people are calling each other on Saturdays to see if, they can open up it because it's looser frameworks, but more intimacy in the business relationships. And
Yeah,
I'm a broker for that stuff. So because I'm heavy into community, because
yeah,
not every founder is able or capable of sourcing all those things and managing all those relationships. I challenge anybody who's listening to this that wants to go the entrepreneurial route. It's going to be more necessary because of what you've described, that global that global neighborhood of resources
yeah,
pull from, promote, share with our friends. And it's what makes this work because you don't need to develop a multi-thousand person company. You really can get this done with your core group doing what you enjoy leading and then bolt on the pieces to support the company's deliveries.
yeah. I recently saw somebody give a talk on the concept of it was basically a one person unicorn company, which a unicorn company is it's a $1 billion valuation, right? That's where companies
Mhm.
value. So it's one person, no employees, creating a company that has a value of a $1 billion, and of how AI tools could enable that. And I found it kind of interesting because I'm like,
It is.
you could technically, but it's like it's still that through services, through all sorts of other things. It's like thousands of people would still be involved in that company, just they're not direct employees. But there, yeah, like you said, there would be other humans that would be just part of other companies doing their thing to support this supposed one. We don't do anything alone. We don't do anything
No,
by
no,
ourselves.
we don't. We don't. I was at a Web3 conference at Stanford last week, and the bold statement was we are in sight of the first solopreneur unicorn.
Yeah.
And I think it's just the first of many. But to your point, it's someone who can keep multiple plates spinning with the companies that pour in. And I don't know how technical you want this call to go. I think we want to stay on the human energy side.
We can get technical, and
I don't well, I
I,
don't want to go
I
too far on this one, but agentic AI is
mhm.
really going to spin up for us the ability to have multiple AIs working on our behalf. I would say proactively handling the tasks of hundreds of interns or front level employees. So agentic AI, it's not even going to be outsourcing it to another company. It's just going to be setting up the correct parameters within your systems to have them effectively handling and managing activity. Some people are very opposed to this. I have the longevity conference that you and I were both at. I had fascinating talk with someone who was just violently opposed to AI being involved in the customer experience loop. But the truth is, if AI can get me my answer easier, if it can be
Mm.
accurate and concise and fast, I would rather engage with an AI, whether in writing or in voice. And there's some
Mhm.
incredible voice programs happening right now that you can't tell the difference. What I'm getting is a solution. And I don't really care who's delivering it. I don't care if it's Larry from Ottawa or if it's L2, the agent that's getting me what I need so I can move on to do other joyful things in my life. And I think there's a mindset shift that we're still working on with the world to tolerate that answers are manufactured, not by humans.
'Cause there's a little bit of like, what does that really mean? Because it's sort of like, is the answer manufactured by a human, or was it just delivered by a non-human? It's because again, it's like you said, it's really
It's a
it's
nuance.
not what it is, it's how it's done. It's like, what's the experience that someone is having? It's, customer service. Like, hey, if I get my answer and it's done in a delightful way and it solves it, I don't care. Like if it's the nicest person, but they can't solve my problem, I'm not happy.
Yeah.
But if it's a, even if it's sort of like an AI that feels inhuman, but it solves it that quickly and isn't that annoying, I'm going to be more happy. It's sort of like, going to a surgeon that doesn't have the best bedside manner, but they fucking fix you. You're happier than the nicest guy or the gal that is incompetent. So really, it's competency, and then if you can combine that with bedside manner in all things, then yeah, I don't
Well,
think
and we're
any, yeah,
finding in medicine and we're finding in your traditional customer experience routes, AIs don't get tired. They don't get cranky. They don't come in lacking sleep because their baby was colicky.
yeah,
Um, um, AIs, there's one company that I'm working with out of San Francisco that has a voice response, and the demo system is an airline. I swear I cannot trick her up. I've even said, oh, I'm going to Dallas. I need to change the flight. I need to change my seat. Now I want a first class upgrade. Oh, now I need a vegan meal. But then I've even said, what's happening in Dallas that week? I might stay an extra day. And I'll be
yeah,
darned if she doesn't list like 3 festivals that are happening in Dallas that are, I'm like, and I don't think any human would tolerate me being so bouncy, me being so
right.
all over the place. And she just keeps being really super pleasant and handling all my oopsie, I need a vegetarian meal. Oopsie, I need, and I think it's pretty remarkable. And if I were a human agent,
Hmm.
and that those things frustrated me, I would
Yeah,
want to be moving on to things that don't frustrate me. Move on to my where I'm supposed to be in life, to my creative endeavors or my analytical endeavors.
yeah. Oh, and I think what's interesting is there's a little bit where some people would definitely just probably get annoyed with that, but then other people, if they weren't under the constraints of metrics of how many you got to churn through, they would probably love to spend an hour with you bouncing around, whatever. But
Yeah.
because they're put in a system where it's like you got to churn through, you have metrics, like the human is actually treated like a machine, then they're going to get annoyed because they know that they're going to be judged. So it's sort of weird that the AI, since it's quote unquote cheaper, is allowed to actually be more human.
But it's not
And
costing the company.
yeah, and there's a little bit of my hope is a lot of this, again, it's how you construct it, where when an AI can detect that, like, okay, maybe it's out of the realm or whatever, or a real human is needed, then it can go, okay, let me get you with somebody else, a human, and they don't have the same constraints, and they could actually spend an hour, but they don't have to do it with the majority of people. It's just sort of these special edge cases. So
Yeah.
again, all this is like how a person sets up the system for success for how we do, like, because I don't know, it's I go to so many of these pitches and there's just sort of this magical thinking of like, oh, the agent is just going to do all of these wonderful things. You just say you want a pizza and you want your medication, and it's going to go and it's going to find this and do that,
Mhm.
and then it's like, maybe, but it could also totally fuck it up, like,
But so can humans.
right.
And that's one
Oh
of the
yeah.
things I'm sensitive to is that our expectations of the systems, of the mechanical, digital
Yeah.
are so high that there's no room for any error.
Because we have experience with humans, so I think we kind of expect that, like, well, I'm going to need to pick the right people to do this. I'm going to need to have some training. I'm going to have some like guardrails. I'm going to have to check in, and that, while I build trust with this, and so with these automated tools as well. And I think and sometimes I can't tell if some of these founders, they actually aren't even thinking about it, or they're just being disingenuous, or but just sort of thinking like, no, it's just going to be great right out the gate. I'm amazed, especially like the robotics companies where they're working with humanoid
Mhm, mhm,
robotics, where they don't even acknowledge like Terminator. It's like, acknowledge some of these things. Like you talk about this in your book, where it's like a concern doesn't necessarily mean that somebody's against you. It's just they're curious, but they've got some concerns, and it's like, address these. And there's a lot of these that I would consider, at the forefront, the most heavily
mhm,
um, funded. And it's like, I don't see them really openly acknowledging some of the challenges or pitfalls or things like that. It's just all pie in the sky. This is going to be great. And it's like, really, could you at least address some of these like
mhm,
little concerns that are actually could be really big if you're not thinking? It's like, and it doesn't build trust when I go like, you haven't thought of like what happens if the robot goes ape shit and now it can literally go anywhere a human can do, and it's out of control. Like, could you address that, please? you know
mhm, mhm.
or instead of delivering me a pizza with pineapple, you deliver me a pizza with poison.
I hear you. And I think this is where the explosion, the public explosion of the consumer market around originally ChatGPT
Hmm.
was, well, 2-year anniversary is coming up at the end of this month. So if you think about it, this phase of accelerated up into the right activity, only a couple of years old. And so I think we need to give people grace to be figuring out what needs to be said and done. I think this is where the collaboration is coming in with my 22-year-old Patagonia example and my 60-year-old VC, because that wisdom, the 22-year-old fresh out of college undergrad entrepreneur never
Hmm.
sat in the hard meetings we did. Never sat in those big, board level type meetings you where you had to build a plan on the fly out of your head when they said, what would it look like? And then had to turn back around in another 12 months and talk about why it failed.
Yeah.
Right? They just don't have exposure to the further beyond the horizon thinking. And that's why the collaboration is happening,
Hmm.
because I think that they are sensing what what they want to do, and that they need to find somebody who can help them watch around the corners. And that's where collaborative intelligence, using the technology as a both a conduit and a reason for being, are occurring. So just give us some grace, because it's only been a couple of years. And
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a little bit of grace, but I feel like there's a little bit of the old which is now, I would say, like the old school Silicon Valley of move fast and break things. That's not going to cut it anymore, because it's sort of like it enables so much to happen so quickly that the benefit can be great, but so can the harm. And so it is kind of like, it's a little bit like the Oppenheimer moment, where it's like it could massively cause, certain things could cause massive amounts of destruction that could set things back. I've been reading the Dune books. I don't know if you saw the Dune movie, but a bit, this, it takes place thousands of years in the future, and thinking machines have been outlawed, because something went wrong, and there's this Butlerian jihad, and it's big war. And so
mhm,
basically in this future, no thinking machines at all. So that means no, basically no AI. And this Dune was written, the first book I think was 1968. So this is 1968, kind of seeing this. And so there is sort of that, like, I feel like if, we're not careful in how we put things out, there's a big enough harm, there can be such a backlash that it's like, nope, we're just not even gonna, it's not gonna happen. We're not gonna allow
mhm,
it. Anything that's like this is deemed too harmful, and we're not gonna have it. And so I do think there has to be, like, some care, because a lot of the stuff that technology was dealing with, it wasn't life and death. It was just like, it would just be annoying. It's like, oh, it fucked up my travel reservation or it did this. But it's sort of like, as things start to control things that literally are life and death, sort of like an autonomous car. I don't know why this hasn't happened, but I think it was like, was it 15, 20 years ago? There was these old people that for some reason they would just mow through farmers markets and kill like 25 people. There was like
We get
five
their
of
food
them in like a
mixed up
couple
on
year
gas and
period.
brake. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like if cars do that or they handle something improperly, it's like, oh my gosh, this is doing something that no rational person would do. There can be a backlash and things like that, and it's depending on where it is and when it happens and who to. So I think the caution, the collaboration is not just a nice thing. I think it becomes
Mhm.
necessary with these
Yep.
tools.
Yep. But
Hmm.
you and I are not aligned on this. It's okay. But with the autonomous car example, I was on a panel at the Santa Clara University Law School,
Yeah,
and lawyers are not ones to let go of the stronghold we have around protecting for risk.
yeah,
But they are actively talking about how far do we have to go with perfection that limits what we're doing to make life so much better and to save lives on the other side of a potential mistake. And the example was there had just been some data come out around autonomous driving, and autonomous driving had taken out, like, I'm going to say, 3 of 5,000 drives that had taken out a mailbox. And that mailbox could be a bicyclist. And
hmm
so, do we get up in arms about that and not release this next generation of autonomous driving or make
hmm
it more accessible to more people? Or do we think about how many hundreds of people a year fall asleep at the wheel
yeah,
and cause death and property destruction? We'd mitigate some of those risks if those people were in autonomous driving cars because the car would pick up for them if they stopped driving. I was really pleased to be in a conversation with a room of academic legal scholars and wannabe, students coming through talking about we can't let perfection stand in the way or absolving us of any risk stand
yeah.
in the way of actually saving lives. And where's the line?
Yeah, well, and this is like it's a challenging thing because this is one of those where it's not necessarily about the numbers, it's about the perceptions and the public vibes. Like if we compare like driving and flying, like flying is orders of magnitude safer than
Mhm.
driving, yet way more people are deathly afraid of getting on an airplane than they are of getting into an automobile or being around automobiles. And as the result of that has ended up being, I think, just that double down and focus on the safety of the airplane because the perceived fears. And I think there's a little bit, and you bring this up a lot in your book, which is about sort of like the transparency aspect. And so I do feel like some of that of like, this, of not trying to hide things, not trying to pretend, but it's like when a human's behind the wheel, there's a lot of situations that are going to be rare, remote, but I have an idea of what a person will do. I don't know what the AI is going to do or what the remote operator who ends up being called in
Mhm.
out what they're going to do. And so I think some of these just like letting people know, like, in certain situations that are highly remote, well, what's the protocol? What's likely going to happen for
Mhm.
those that care, for those that want it. And then, that maybe lets people go like, wait, is that how we want it to be? Because I don't know if I've mentioned this case to you before, but just sort of you're in a car and if a group of people decides they want to get in front of it and they want to attack the car and or its occupants, a human driver is going to be like, fuck this, if I got to run somebody over, I'm getting to safety. I highly doubt that is the protocol for an autonomous vehicle at this time.
At
That
this
it
time, I'm sure it's to preserve human life.
Well, which human lives?
Yeah, I hear you, but I think it's not going to take human life. So by default, then it would let it occur. That's my assumption. I think you wrote about that in a LinkedIn post,
Yeah,
or you touched on it. So yeah, I've seen
yeah.
it. But
Um,
you and I are a little different because I don't think we can get things perfect before we reap the benefits of having them in market, making people's lives better.
yeah.
You'd probably phrase it differently. That's the way I phrase it.
I feel like in some ways we definitely agree more than we disagree.
100%. 100%.
Because yeah, with just your collaboration. And because you're right, it's like you're not going to get things fully on board by thinking about it, but there is a lot of stuff that by thinking about it, by getting it in front of people, like that you can figure out without having to actually make the mistake. Because like you said, there's a lot of wisdom, which is why, the best companies that do the best bring in the most people that are very different. Because
Mhm.
great leaders are aware that they have
Mhm.
blind spots, that they're missing
Mhm.
things.
Mhm. Mhm. I think also on your point about how much is happening, you and I live in a bubble. So
Hmm.
for anybody in the audience, Justin and I live about 30 miles apart, I'm guessing, but on the peninsula, oh, you're on the edge. Uh, but we live in the Bay Area, and it's a bubble. It's a bubble. Everything here is really focused on tech, even more narrowed in right now on AI. I think it feels fast for us because there's so much and it is overwhelming. But I think for the rest of the world, there's awareness, but they don't feel the same level of pressure of encroachment that AI is coming to sit on top of them. We're field testing this. All these
Yeah.
ideas, all these entrepreneurs, this is field tests. Now,
And
something
this is
else
one of
though in
those.
Europe has lost their entrepreneurial edge. Not that they ever had an edge, in my opinion, but all of their focus on regulation,
Mhm.
which is the governmental public approach to making people feel better, to put those hard guardrails on it. Europe is struggling because the gains Europe had paid for in terms of, entrepreneurs getting $50 million to seed government dollars to seed their visions. All the focus they've had the last 3 or 4 years on building these monolithic regulatory practices has sucked the lifeblood out of them. And I meet those entrepreneurs here at events
Mhm.
here for the past week. I've had 7 for 7 days at conferences. I've met so many entrepreneurs here from Europe, but building their companies here because there's just not the mindset for creativity and collaboration around what they want to do in in Europe, anywhere.
Just to be a little contrary, I'll kind of bring
Okay.
up, because I think, I don't know exact numbers, but I think overall that, if you look at like, the happiness, or especially like, the health, I think Europeans are on average more
100%.
happier and
Yep.
healthier than your
They sure
average
are.
American. And so there's a little bit of like, and this is a little bit, philosophical of, why are we here? It's sort of like you're able to innovate and have all this money, but to what end if people end up being miserable, and most of that money, the GDP in the US goes more and more to, our bloated healthcare system that doesn't seem to deliver, healthier lives. There's a little bit of like, what are we doing?
But we can change that, and
Mhm.
we can be part of enabling energy and vision around that. I've talked with several high pedigree founders, and I'm talking Stanford master's degree in engineering level founders, still in their mid 20s, who are already disillusioned because they're like, I wanted to build something really technically important, but I also wanted to do more. And it's exactly what you just described, that they wanted to build something, but also have this kind of parallel
Mhm.
activity that was more about the greater good. And they're disappointed that there's nowhere to land those conversations. There's not a community or a channel to talk about, how do we make the world a happier, better place with what we know how to do. I have talked with enough founders who are smart and ambitious that see the need. It's coming. It is
Yeah.
coming that I don't know what it looks like, but I know that there's so much interest in this is not
Maybe,
enough for
maybe
me. I'm
maybe
not
it's time for us
satisfied
to
by
build that community of the people that have the tech and the heart,
that.
and then bring in the people with the wisdom, and let's also find the people with the money. And maybe we'll have to, and anybody listening, if you're interested,
Let's throw out the challenge, and we
yeah.
and we will coordinate discussions to frame it and build it.
Yeah, because I like to say that just making a lot of money, I feel it's been done. That's actually lazy. If all you're doing is making billions and billions of dollars, that's lazy. That's old. It's been done. It's like, can you do that and make people healthier and happier and more joyful? Like that's the challenge, I feel like. That's what the real challenge is.
Mhm.
It's not just creating cool tech, not just making money, but it's can you do that and ensure that like everybody's happier, healthier, and like feeling good and loving life. Like that's the challenge I want to put out there to the listeners.
So they can get in touch with us, right? They can,
Yeah.
anybody
Well,
can connect with us on LinkedIn, send us both a message,
yeah. So
or Justin
Tanya,
at Justin Wink.
yeah, Tonya J Long, and yeah, how can people get in contact with you? At is your website tanyajlong.com or where would you like
It's
to send
Tanya
people?
at quantumcrow.ai. That's my advisory where I do. But I think that would be, when I talk to 26-year-olds
Hmm.
who are working on their master's degree and they founded a company and they're already thinking about legacy, but not in any kind of bloated, arrogant way, just in a way
Yeah.
of I want to matter. I want to do things
Hmm.
that make my heart feel good. In addition to these hard, complex problems I solved in XYZ part.
Yeah.
When you hear that over and over from people who are ambitious and resourceful and drove themselves to that level of excellence already in their short lives, there's legs for it. And I think that they need help, though. I think people like you and I understand broader networks, frameworks, funding. Again, it'll be collaborative for us to assemble this. We just need momentum. And I think all you and I need is, a few people saying, help me. And we'll be like, yeah, let's get in and do this. But I think it would be important.
Yeah. Because yeah, there's definitely some big challenges that people in the world is facing, and yeah, we need big, well thought out and well felt out solutions. Because the greatest solution that nobody wants isn't a good solution. And I'm sure in your companies you've seen lots of stuff that was great on paper, or maybe even, but just whatever, it was brought out wrong, and people said, fuck this solution. I'm going to just keep doing what I've been doing. I don't know. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
buying in. And it's just like
Mm-hmm.
a lost
Mm-hmm.
opportunity.
Yeah, there's plenty of those. And where those all miss is lack of communication. Lack
Yeah.
of communication on the front end, lack of buy-in, lack of engaging people who are going to be users, getting their feedback, getting them enrolled, a very
Hmm.
specific term, but getting them enrolled in the vision. And CEOs have been struggling with those concepts for years because we're all moving so fast to hit market conditions, right? But I think
Yeah.
you can't move so fast that you forget your consumer. That's what you're
Yeah.
describing. Those failures are when we fail to communicate and engage.
Yeah. Movement without direction is just noise. And yeah, if you're not doing the types of things that you're talking about, you're not actually moving with purpose, with real direction. It's just a bunch of busy, noisy movement. Like it's like, yep, energy is being spent, but is what's it producing?
I don't want to detract from the success
Yeah.
of some of the major companies on this peninsula that have cemented Silicon Valley as the innovation hub of the world. But a lot of what happens is noise in the bigger companies. A ton of what happens is not core to serving their consumers because they're projecting. We are a make work society,
Hmm.
um, and I think people are getting tired of being part of the make work machinery.
Yeah, because it's I think
Mhm.
maybe some people don't fully realize it. I think more and more people do, but it's just a matter of when there will be no need for humans to do anything for survival. Like between AI and robotics, everything needed for human survival can be taken care of at zero cost. So it's like, yeah, what do we do? What is life? What is society? What is when you don't have to do anything to survive?
You have to
Hmm.
reframe purpose.
Yeah.
Because people need to feel purpose. There's a lot of opinions and a lot of inflammation in the system about, I don't have the right word right now, it's welfare, right? Because
Yeah.
the concept is that people who don't work and earn what they get are often demotivated because
Yeah.
they don't have purpose. So that's the simplest way I can say it. But I
Yeah.
think we are reaching, given what you just said, and I see that coming in potentially in our lifetimes. Um, I think we're going to have to evolve to ways of finding different purpose that doesn't involve my 60-hour work week,
Hmm.
cranking on a corporate thing, but seeing my value in building nature and building the values of children and, choose your thing, the
Yeah.
sequoias, John Muir, whatever it is, when people's needs are met, housing, healthcare, all those things. When we find ways to do that, which AI will help enable, then we've got to, I think, in parallel, be working on people finding their purpose because a lot of people have never had time. A lot of people
Yeah,
came
they haven't been
straight out of
allowed.
school.
They've been given a purpose that is
Mhm.
more and more outdated. And I don't know, you've seen me do this at events where people love to ask my least favorite question. I know you don't like this question, the what do you do? And sometimes I go, oh, I bring delight and joy to those that I interact with.
Yeah, and I
Because
call
that can be a
it
great purpose. I mean,
is a great purpose. It is a great purpose.
and that since some people run in the other way, and then other people go like, oh, maybe I do want to be around this person a little bit more. So, but we
Well, it's
don't
at
all
least
have
an
to be around everybody.
intriguing hook to get them to find out more about
Yeah, because you're kind of like me. Like it's like I have so many things that I do. Like neither one defines me, and depending on what you're into, what you're up to, like most of them might be irrelevant. And so it's like, yeah, just tell me what you want. Just tell me,
you.
because that's really what somebody wants when they ask that question. What do you do? It's like, can you do something for me? And it's
Mhm.
like, just tell me what
Mhm.
you want.
Are you valuable to me because you have skill X, Y, or connection Z?
Yeah. And if that's the level you're at, that's great. Just own it. And just be, yeah. And then let's see if I can help you out. Because like I
Mhm.
said, yeah, it's like I like to bring joy and delight. And if I can help you with one of my skills or find you somebody, but
Mhm.
yeah, let's cut to the chase.
One of my favorite people always includes the fact that he's a surfer in any um, communication about him. Uh,
Uh,
he, you know who I'm talking about, and but I think that's an amazing thing to do because he's inviting people into his personal life. He's
yeah.
inviting people to see him as more than just the business entity that he represents, but he's showing them, there's a lot that can be wrapped into surfing, in
Hmm.
terms of, your physical health, your love of nature, your sense of adventure, but it's a platform point for a conversation, uh, to get people started with, well, I went surfing last weekend, or I've never been on a surfboard. I think that's an example that Nick leads with, and the rest of us are starting to become more open to the wholeness of who we are. I'm not just Tanya Long, an author, speaker, board advisor, and AI strategist. I'm so much more, right? And so
Yeah.
my little 20-second elevator pitch needs to be in line with, how do I want people to come to me? How do I want to receive people?
Yeah, because it's one of those like we're usually so worried about, oh, I want to bring people in, and it's like, no, we don't want to bring just anybody in. It's like I want to bring in my people. Yeah, because it's like if it's like, do you really want to deal with people that don't dig that you're an Airstream enthusiast, like that don't appreciate that aspect of you? It's like
Or
there's too
aren't
many
at least
people.
curious about it.
Yes, yeah, they don't have to necessarily be all in on it, but it's like, oh, cool. I'm interested to know about that, and spend some time with somebody and learn about that and appreciate that. Yeah. And if somebody's like, well, that's it's like, "Well, get out of here. There's plenty of world. Go
Yeah.
somewhere else then."
Yeah, if your thing is quilting and embroidery, then there's a place for you, and there are people for you. And you're right,
Yeah.
we should align, but that also comes again with clarity of communication, who you
Mm-hmm.
are, what you value, what's important to you. And I think that up until randomly 4 or 5 years ago, there was much more of a delineation between work and personal. But I think we're seeing that much more blended and merged because people are interacting on Saturdays, and not because work's so hard, but because they just flew from Austin back to Finland,
Mhm.
and they got home and they wanted to let me know they read my book on the plane, and
Yeah.
and so you're engaging because that's a true story, and opening yourself up to who the fullness of who you are. I think it's part AI as well because AI is getting us out of the nooks and crannies of our binary lives, our binary zero and ones. I'm a customer experience executive in the retail vertical, right? It's stripping down all that because we can be anything. We can use our skills towards so much more.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's really making it easier for us to all embrace that we're totally unique and totally human, and that there's a whole spectrum we can play with at all
That's right.
time. And it's not like I am this and I have to be this in this area 100%. And then, like you
Mhm.
said, oh, I switched to the other thing and that's gone. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to be
Yeah.
one way in one area and then
Mhm.
another area, and then maybe there's some aspect of ourselves that, oh wait, I haven't even found a place where this part of me can even
Be.
be. And
But one of the things I have to interject here
yeah.
is we can't build ecosystems that are mirrors of ourselves, that are only mirrors of ourselves. I hear what you're saying about engaging with people who get you, who appreciate the fullness of who you are. To my founder communities, I would say sometimes you have to be a little uncomfortable because that's bringing in people with diverse experiences, people who think differently. Some cultures are just much less warm. In my words, I'm Southern, so I got nothing but
Yeah.
casseroles for people. But people from other cultures are. It seems like a more rigid conversation.
Yeah, and
Opening to
yeah, I
that.
think that's a great distinction because it's not about just bringing in, um, yeah, yes, people that are just all about kissing ass. It's really more about people that want to basically almost like destroy that part of yourself and be like, that is not that like that aspect of you is not okay.
Mhm.
um, and I don't even want to see it. I don't want to tolerate it. I don't want to hear about it. I think it's going like that type of thing. That's not, but someone that goes like, okay, I see you, I hear you, and I'm going to lovingly poke maybe at some of that or question because I love and accept, and maybe I see more or I want to know more. I think that's the yeah, I think that's a good distinction of yeah, it's not just a feel good like everything's like you're so great, but it's really just like a like okay, yeah, like I'm here, I see you, I feel you,
Mhm.
and now let's mix it up in sort of this vat of starting from acceptance and love from that instead of the like,
Mhm.
wait, you're not like me, that's not allowed. You better destroy that part of yourself that's not in line with my worldview. Because yeah, it's like I want people that are different than me.
Mhm.
I don't want
But I
yeah,
would also add, people need to embrace who they are,
mhm,
um, and be out loud about who you are. I talked about it in the book, and I know you would have noticed in different sections where I went to state schools in Tennessee. I'm not a Stanford MBA.
mhm,
My master's degree is in public policy. I'm not an engineer.
yeah,
I am other, and I'm a female executive who came up during a time when there often weren't other female executives. But my otherness, I didn't let that be something that pushed me to the back of the room.
yeah,
For whatever reason, divine, I I embraced my otherness. I put on the bright red lips and the pearls, showed
yeah.
up with my way, and could sit there and listen to technical problems with a whole bunch of people who should not have been troubleshooting those problems and say, is the server rack getting power? I could
Yes,
come
it
up
is.
with.
Some of these quote unquote dumb questions are actually the most brilliant because sometimes the people are too close. They don't see the big picture. And I love that switch
100%.
that you had where at some point you're just like, wait, all of this is my superpower.
It
And it's
is
almost
my.
as soon as you saw it, there were always plenty of people ready to see it and embrace you. But it really was.
And
So
don't
I
think
don't,
it's
yeah.
not intimidating to go into some of these high, high, high pedigree success crowds, but being different is wonderful. Being different because you grew up in Nigeria or because I grew up on a tobacco farm in Tennessee, but what you bring makes you so much more interesting. And I find that so many people feel like the otherness makes them less than. And that is a conscious choice and I get imposter syndrome. I speak about it on stages and in panels, but we have to individually push through that and say, I've got something unique and cool about me. I'm a single female that tows a 6,000-pound Airstream trailer. What do you
Hmm.
want to know about it? What do you want to know about where I've been with that thing? And when you embrace who you are, I think people are just drawn to you. And that would also be my encouragement is for people to know who they are when it's outside of coloring outside of the lines and allow people to see
Yeah, there's always going to be some people in the world
that.
that are not gonna like because you're X, Y, or Z. But the vast majority of people, they don't care. And once you show up as I'm this or I'm that, and they usually just go, "Hey, we're happy you're here." They're not going to beat down your door and drag you into the room, but once you show up, they're like, "Oh, we've been waiting for you. So glad that you finally decided to show up and join us." Because I see so many people like it's because of my skin, it's because of my gender, it's because of this preference, and I felt that because it's sort of like you look at me and it's like, oh, I'm part of the privileged class. I didn't feel that like most of my life because of like, numerous things I talk about in my book, Engineered to Love. So it's like we all have this ability to think the world is out to get us. The world is incredibly neutral and kind of doesn't give a shit. And sort of once you decide, hey, I deserve to be here and I'm going to play, anybody's welcome to play in this world now more than ever. Now more than
Mhm.
ever, because I don't think there's anybody who isn't welcome or isn't showing up in some fashion in some of these very high powered, high money stakes. Yeah, there's space for everybody, but nobody's gonna beat down your door to bring you in. You just kind of go like, yeah, it's time for me to show up, and they will. Your space is there.
And that was largely the impetus behind the book.
Yeah.
To get through to everyone, you've got value. You don't need to be an AI PhD level of experience or education. Your skills matter and what you bring to the table matters. And everybody has
Hmm.
wisdom, some degree of wisdom, vision, love, um, all those, courage, and all those things play out to make you a solid leader. And so the point of the book was around, leaders have to lead, and you don't
Hmm.
have to be technical in this AI world to make your difference leading teams and enabling them to do their best work to bring it forward. Yeah.
And in some ways, AI can make it easier to interact and communicate with the technical people because it can kind of brush you up or help explain stuff. And so,
100%.
yeah, because again, it's the communication. So, yeah, for some great info, AI and the New Oz. You can get it on Amazon, probably other places too, but it's definitely on Amazon. So I'd recommend go get it. It's a fun read. Brings in the Wizard of Oz, which if you're watching this about when this comes out, Wicked's coming out. So I think it's in the zeitgeist. The Wizard of Oz and AI, and let's go down the yellow brick road and create the new Oz. So thanks so much, Tanya. Any last words?
No, I just really appreciate being here and having this conversation and
Me
look
too. This is
forward
a
to
lot of
people
fun.
reaching out to us to start something.
Yeah. Yeah,
I
let's
think
build
that'll be
that
fun.
community for collaborative intelligence. I love it. All right, thank you. And with that, good
Okay.
day, everybody. Take care.
Thank
Bye.
you so much.
Thanks for tuning in to Engineering Emotions and Energy with Justin Wink, Ph.D. Today's episode resonated with you? Please subscribe and leave a 5-star review. Your feedback not only supports the show, but also helps others find us and start their journey of emotional and energetic mastery. You can also help by sharing this podcast with someone you think will love it just as much as you do. Together, we're engineering more amazing lives.